Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Sparsho from Destrosa Studios and I've spent the last 7 years working with film directors on animated series, perfecting the art of cinematography. Today, I'm going to share some of my top tips on how you can bring your visions to life inside of Unreal Engine. Whether you're a filmmaker, animator or just passionate about virtual production, stick around because these techniques can transform your scenes into stunning cinematic masterpieces. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. Tip number 1 is going to be creating depth in your scene. There's a few ways that you can use to create depth in your scene. So I'll show you how you can do exactly that. So if I go over to my camera settings and you can see my focal length is currently set to 45 and I'm just going to change it to 80. This instantly creates more depth and creates more background blur, but we can take it a step further. So as you can see, there's not much going on the background. So in order to create depth, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be shooting from a corner so you get a better view of the room and what's in the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slowly move my camera. So as you can see, this already brings more depth to the scene because you have more background elements right now. So if I adjust the focus, so you're gonna notice we have created more depth. And this brings us on to the second tip. Use larger lenses wherever you can. So why do I say this? So a larger lens is always going to give you a shallower depth of field. So a larger lens means more shallow depth of field. So what do I mean by that? Let's try something like 105 millimeters. You can see it creates more background separation. If I readjust the focus again to something like this, yeah, you can already see this creates more depth to the scene. But there are proper use cases for larger lenses and smaller lenses. So for this instance, I'm just going to keep it at 80 because that looks better and we don't lose too much of the scene. Okay, let's move on to tip number 3, which is make your background more interesting. So as you can see, our background is very bland and there's almost nothing there. So that's why the shot doesn't look too interesting to us. So what we can do is add a bunch of elements in the background to make it look better. It can be lights, it can be like, photos, something like this. You can try various different things to make your scene pop. So let's try this. Okay, let's take a look at the before and after. Let's move on to tip number 4. Controlling your lights with flags. So you might ask, what's a flag? So I already created a flag so we can look at. So I'll just go outside and make this visible. So as you can see, I'm just going to get out of my camera so you can see it easily. So as you can see, this is just a cube that has a black material slapped onto it. So what this does is, this actually controls the light that is coming from the outside. So let's have a look how this affects our scene. So I'm just going to be quickly enabling and disabling this. See how much it controls the light. From my years of experience in cinematography, what I can tell you is, if I had a choice between a extra light or a flag, I would almost certainly go for the flag. So this way I can control the light to wherever I want it to be, and I can control it accordingly. So what do I mean by that? So you can see we can scale this cube over here, or our flag. So if I scale this, you can see it gradually lets in more light. If I decrease the scale on the x-axis, and on the z-axis as well. So this is how you can control the light in your scene. So for now, I'm just going to be keeping it like this. Moving to the 5th tip, which actually ties really well with our 4th tip. So our 5th tip is going to be playing with lights and shadows. So what do I mean by that? Well, you can make your scene moody, or make your scene look very lighthearted, or maybe very dark, depending on your lighting. So let's try that. So I'm just going to be adding in a few more lights. So I'm just going to quickly get out of this camera and pin this here. I'm just going to be adding a rec light. So this is what it looks like with turned off, and this is what it looks like with turned on. Another bonus tip for you guys is, whenever you are lighting an object from the edge, try to light it from the edge that is further away from the camera rather than what is close to the camera. So I'll show you what I mean by this. Okay, let's have a look at what I mean. So as you can see, we have 2 lights that are lighting the face. If I disable the light on the right side, as you can see, the light from the left side is lighting our mannequin from the angle which is closer to the camera. So if I just hide this for a moment so you guys can see it better, so you can see it does not look as pleasing as the other light did. So if I just disable this one, you can really see how much difference it makes. So here's an example from a real life scene. Look at how the face is lit. So you can see there is a light coming from directly from here and is hitting the face. As you can see, it's just hitting here. And you can see this entire area is almost in the dark. This is only lit by some environmental lights. And you can also see the camera is looking at the side which is in the shadow, not on the side which is in the light. So yeah, this is how you can use light and shadows to make your scene more contrasty and make it look more moody. Okay, let's light up our scene just a little bit more. Okay, let's now look at the before and the after. This is the before. This is the after. Let's move on to the next step, using camera shake to make our scenes look more believable. Okay, for this we're going to need to add a little bit of movement in the camera, so let's do just that. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to move this camera like so. Something like this should work. Let's check it out. As you can see, the movement looks very smooth, which is unnatural. It doesn't happen in the real world. So what we can do to fix this, we can add a camera shake to our camera. So let's make a camera shake. Okay, I'm going to go over to my blueprints and search for camera shake. Okay, and I'm going to select camera shake base and just name it simple shake test. Alright, let's open this up. When you open this for the first time, you're going to see something like this. But what I want you to do is just close this and open it up again, and you're going to see something like this. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select a shake pattern. I'm going to be going for the noise camera shake pattern, and from here you can see there's a bunch of different settings to control the shake on the location and the rotation and even the field of view here. And inside the location you can see there is a location amplitude multiplier and there's a frequency multiplier as well. So what this does is, if you have a value set in here, it's just going to multiply it overall. So you can tweak them individually like this, and you can tweak them globally just so. And same goes for the rotation. There is a global rotation multiplier as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tone this down just a little bit, and let's see what this gives us. So before we close that, I'm going to open this up again. You can see there's something called timing, and there's a duration here. So we're going to set the duration to 0, so it's infinite, and it's save. Then I'm going to go over to my sequencer and click on this plus icon and search for my shake. It was called simple shake test, and you're going to see something like this pop up. So let's play. As you can see, this does not look right. The shake is way too hectic. So let's just tone it down. So what we can do is just go to our camera shake and dial down our amplitude just a little bit, and dial our frequency as well, and let's see what this gives us. The shake is still there, but it's much more subtle, and this looks more believable now. This is like the subtle movement that you get when you're moving a camera. So this can add a touch of realism to your scenes. Okay, let's move on to our next step, which is setting up your aperture to get more foreground and background separation. And for this, I'm going to be switching up our scene so I can demonstrate this to you guys better. Alright, as you can see, I have a scene prepared with the camera in here of keyframe different apertures so you guys can see. So in this frame, the aperture is set to 2.8, and in this frame the aperture is set to 1.2. You guys can see the difference between the 2 frames. You can see how shallow the depth of field becomes if I decrease down the aperture. Before you can adjust your aperture, you just have to keep a few things in mind. If I go over here and decrease my aperture, you're gonna notice our scene gets quite bright. So how do we fix that? We're going to have to go back to our exposure and manually dial it in until it looks okay. Yeah, something like this looks okay. So this is how you would change the aperture. Now you might ask, why is the exposure, or why is there more light when I change the aperture? So in physical cameras, what aperture does is it means how much light the sensor is going to get. So a lower aperture means more light is going to hit the sensor, therefore it's going to create a better bokeh effect, and it is going to create more background and foreground separation. And when you open up the lens to let more light in, the image is going to get overexposed, so we need to compensate for that. And same goes for the other way around. If you increase the aperture, the amount of light that gets into the sensor is very small, so the whole scene gets darker and your depth of field gets wider as well. And you can use this trick to do hero shots. Like in this one, I'm just portraying one character, so I can dial down the aperture and get the background and foreground separation more to emphasize on the character and the mood of the scene. So this is how you could make something like, make a conversation when you're focusing on a character. So this is good for that. So let's move on to the final step. So this is the rule of 180 degrees. So whenever you're filming a conversation, the camera should not go past the 180 degree mark. So what do I mean by this? So I'm just going to show you guys an example of how this looks. So as you guys can see, there are 2 cameras here. Imagine this is two people having conversation, and this is camera 1 and this is camera 2. So camera 1 is pointing at this character and camera 2 is going to be pointing at this character. So you're gonna notice this, the camera does not go past this line, meaning that the camera does not go past the 180 degree mark. So as you can see, this rotation that the camera does is actually 180 degree. So if you rotate more than that, then it's going to break the immersion. So, and we don't want that. So let's see an example of this inside of Unreal Engine. So I've prepared a scene here so you guys can take a look. I'll just play it. So you guys can see it's easier for me to understand where the conversation is flowing from. And so this guy is talking to her, and if I move the camera, so you can easily understand what is going on in the scene. So if I go back and take a look here and see what I've got, as you can see, the camera is never going past the 180 degree mark, as you can see. So keep this in mind whenever you're recording a conversation. Just follow the 180 degree rule so it does not break the immersion. Well, this is it for this video, and if you guys want to see more tips and tricks videos, just let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one.